I feel like PMMs are very naturally entrepreneurial. I have hated that diagram for the longest. I think that one diagram has done more detriment to our job than it actually has helped. And what I've recognized is great fortune and great opportunities come out of putting myself out there and being bold. And I want to have the wildest life that when I'm like super like awesome and 90, hopefully years old, that I'm like, wow, that was exceptional. I feel like we need to do what product management did 10 years ago. Product management, they just got together, they created the rooms, they created the space, they created their own voices within product management. And then they created their definition and they told the market it, and then the market values product management. I feel like we're there, but we're 10 years later.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vipul Nanda, and I have with me.
Hey, everyone. My name is Varun Trivedi.
And we're the founders of GoPMM, an India-focused product marketing community. We started about 8 months ago to try to connect Indian product marketers with a body of knowledge and understanding of what product marketing is, and more importantly, what it could be. In the course of our journey in these 8 months, we've gathered together 1,500 lovely folks who are a beautiful part of a community that keeps helping each other out. But we also wanted to start reaching out to other product marketing leaders across the world to get their perspectives in. And as part of that, we've started our podcast. And I'm super excited to have on our first episode, Hattie the PMM. Welcome, Hattie.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, so one of the things that we wanted to kind of talk to you about, and we're super excited to have you with us, was your journey into product marketing. Because I think every product marketer has their own origin story about how they found product marketing. And I believe yours was particularly unconventional, given that you were a founder and then moved into that. Would love for you to share your journey with us.
Yeah, so I joke that I'm the Benjamin Button of the career world, where I've started off like quite high up and then I've niched down later in life. So initially, when I broke into tech, I was the CEO of my own company. It was an e-commerce platform, the very first of its time, for very like body positive and feminist fashion brands, which in the early, I think it was like 2013, was very unheard of. So yeah, I had that for 7 years, built out the team here in the UK. It was insane foray into like building out a company and like all of the product marketing that was associated with it. So when I exited the company, then a Finnish company wanted to hire me as their CMO. And yeah, it was amazing experience because they were both B2G and then I built out their B2B function. So B2G was business to government. So they wanted to replicate their success within the Scandinavian region, within the UK. And they wanted someone who could head up their marketing department in order to do that. So that was a really, really fun few years there. And then, yeah, later on, I joined a US firm and worked remotely from here, from the UK. And it was amazing because then I actually landed the actual product marketing job title, which I never knew was a thing. But I feel like I've naturally been doing it, you know, making sure that positioning and messaging was right and making sure that there was an actual gap in the market for a product that I was working on. And what I recognized was product marketing is very like visceral throughout my entire career. So I've been in tech for over 10 years now, and product marketing has always been the heart of everything that I've done and all of the success that has come out of it, making millions and generating millions of dollars of revenue for organizations that I've worked at through product marketing. So I definitely have seen the value of it. And that's why I started to create free content online when I was employed last year and started my YouTube channel, started posting on LinkedIn, and just wanted to really help other PMMs just do the best PMM work that they could as well. So yeah, my career has been a really funny one, but you know, in hindsight, when I look back, I'm like, oh, it was meant to be that way.
That was quite a journey, Hattie. But you mentioned that you transitioned from being a founder to product marketing. So what are some of the strategic similarities you see in both the roles? Is there any?
Oh, huge amounts. So whether product marketers want to admit this to themselves is up to you, dude, like up to you. But for me, I feel like PMMs are very naturally entrepreneurial. And especially if you're in a startup or a mid-sized organization, I'm not too sure about the larger organizations. So the entrepreneurial nature of being like, okay, we need to hit a specific goal of typically ARR. Therefore, okay, let's interview customers. Let's deep dive into the market and the competitive intel. How do we really stack up in terms of our features? How do we really compete or do we not? And therefore, do we need to lean on marketing a little bit more heavier? Or can we then enable our sales in order to really drive that? So for me, the disparity between most people thinking, oh, I'm just a product marketer, I'm not really a owner of my product, I'm not really a founder of my like feature set. I'm just like, no, like when I was previously hired as a PMM in my last American role, the VP of marketing specifically said to me, she was like, you've been the CMO and the CEO of your own products in your career. Now I want you to come into this organization and be the CMO of your product base, like the products that you own, be the CMO, be the de facto CMO of it. That's the culture that they had in the American firm. I was like, okay, like they like the fact that I'm entrepreneurial. They like the fact that I don't just do the cookie cutter, go to market, step-by-step checkbox and be like, that's it, good luck, whatever. It's like, okay, well, what are the out of the box like ideas that I can add to the go-to-market plan? What are the ways that we can pivot when it doesn't go quite right? How do I make sure that I don't just be like, okay, well, that's the end of my day and I clock off, but actually, well, when I log in the next day, how do I make sure that I'm actually iterating and maintaining what I've worked on the previous day and not just jumping to something new because it's new and shiny? So I think there's a lot of overlap there. And I think we as PMMs, we are always on the clock. Like our minds are always whirring because we work across so many different teams. I think this is why in a funny way, a lot of PMMs who do go the fractional or agency route, they do exceptionally well because they are able to not only do the work, but actually work on the business as well. Because in some ways, we're kind of being built whilst we're being employed to be entrepreneurial, to be the founder, to be the CEO. And in some ways, I've seen the exact same skill set transition into what I'm doing right now. So yeah, there's a lot of overlap from my opinion and my career.
I can completely agree with you, Hattie, because I also have a very similar career trajectory like you. I also very freshly graduate and then started my own startup. And over there, I was also doing marketing. I was also doing PMM, but as you mentioned, I had no idea that there is a job title called PMM as well. And very similar career. I moved from being a founder to leading the marketing. Then I introduced to hardcore PMM, that how it happened. So completely resonate with everything you said.
See, it's not just me. So, like the proof is in the pudding. You're right here.
Which I guess brings us, Hattie, to the $1,000,000 question that I think every product marketer has been asked more often than they're comfortable with, which is, what to you is product marketing, and how would you kind of set up the boundary conditions of it?
Yeah, it's a really funny one because this is why a lot of organizations just don't know the value or the definition of product marketing, and therefore they just make it up because they're like, oh, well, I heard it on the podcast and blah blah blah. And I've had this real hatred towards this one diagram, which is like the Venn diagram, where it says product marketing is an overlap in the middle of sales, product, and marketing. And I have hated that diagram for the longest time, and I've posted about it very openly on like a YouTube video that I have, which is called like What is Product Marketing Fully Explained, and on like LinkedIn posts that I put out, because I'm like, I think that one diagram has done more detriment to our job than it actually has helped. Like, sure, it's pretty, it's very, very pretty. Like everyone loves a Venn diagram. But the problem is we are not an overlap by any stretch of the imagination. We are our own standalone function that acts like consultants, in my opinion, that works across so many different teams and is able to spot the gaps quickly in order for us to fill those gaps, whether it be through positioning, messaging, sales enablement, competitive intel, market research, whatever. We find where the burning issue is, and then we fill it like a consultant would. The problem with that Venn diagram is it makes us out to seem like we're doing duplicative work, like we're doing the work of sales, we're doing the work of marketing, when actually we're enabling them and keeping everyone on track to telling the same story and going in the same direction. So how I describe it is we are our own hub. Like if you imagine, India as the country. So imagine if in like product marketing is Mumbai, for example. So we are Mumbai, and then let's say like customer support is Delhi. Then they're their own hub in Delhi. We're our own hub in Mumbai. It doesn't mean that, we're overlapping. It means that the two cities work well as the country of India, which is like the country is like the company. So imagine if it's a company, we're working as our own hubs in our own different ways. However, we help each other to make the company work as a whole. So that's why I'm just a big proponent of like, we are our own hub. Sales is their own hub. Customer support is their own hub. They all have different OKRs, different KPIs that they're working towards. However, we're here to help them hit their goals, and they're there to help us in order for us to help them. So it's a symbiotic relationship, but it's not like an overlapping role whatsoever. So when it comes to product marketing and they're like, what do you actually do? I'm like, well, in some organizations, I fit under marketing. In some organizations, I fit under product. But ultimately what I do is I act like a consultant that sees the gaps that I need filling. I fill it as quickly as possible, and then I just generate money for the company. That's like if I was to explain it to a person at a party. But yeah, I think what's important is really find what the definition is for you and like obviously your listeners, and figure out how is it that I can explain what product marketing is, so then you can lean into your skill set, your strengths, but without kind of shooting yourself in the foot and saying you're a duplicative role, because a lot of organizations now are just looking to cut anything that's a duplicative role. And I'm not willing to do that for my career. And therefore, I just do not use that Venn diagram that I see a lot of. And I think like maybe you guys have seen that Venn diagram, right?
Everyone has, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's everywhere. It's pretty, but it just doesn't help.
And it's quite reductive as well. And that brings me to a somewhat reductive question that you touched upon, the entire idea of where product marketing sits. And while I think a lot of us would be happier if product marketing was its own hub, as you put it, in a lot of cases, it either sits in marketing or in product. And at least very recently, there's been a lot of chatter on LinkedIn about where it sits. Would love to kind of, and I do think you started off on that, but the one perspective that one could add to it is that if I was looking at it in terms of classification, or am I looking at it in terms of tactics and outcomes? Because it might sound like marketing and it might have a lot of similarities in terms of outcomes with marketing, but tactically it might help to have product marketing work more closely with product. So where do you sit on that kind of spectrum of where it should be, what you should kind of prioritize between those two things, and how it should operate?
Honestly, it depends on the organization. So I would actually recognize, okay, well, they brought me in and fit me under marketing, but actually it seems like product needs product marketing a lot more. Then maybe there might be a case for making a business case as to why you should fit under product. I think a lot of the rhetoric that's come with product marketing is like, especially online on Google, is like, this is the way it's done. And therefore do not question everything and do it how I've told you in this SEO article on Google, when actually it should be, well, what is the problem that the business is facing right now? So for example, as you said, if the product team are like completely way behind in terms of their features that they're building, they have no support whatsoever, is there a way that if the head of product was okay with it, could you fit under that team? Or is there a way that you could, on the kind of like down low, work with the product team a lot more whilst working under marketing? For me, I generally do not care whether we fit under marketing or product. It doesn't keep me awake at night. I think that there's a lot of people who say we're not marketing, we're this, we're that. I just personally think so long as I see myself as a consultant, I don't care whether I fit. I'm just like, I'm there to get the results for the organization. So at my last job at the American firm, even though I was under marketing and I worked alongside the growth marketers, whatever, and we had the same VP of marketing, I was so entrenched in the product team, you could not have told the difference. Like I was there. I was like at all of their weekly meetings. I was like part of their team. They knew I had their back. They had mine. I was so close to them. Whenever like they would come to the UK and like travel and go on holidays, we'd always meet up. I met their families. Like I was so embedded with the product team. You had no idea that I was not part of it, right? So for me, it's a case of I'm just thinking about my job and also the impact that I have in my career, so then I can have a really nice CV or portfolio that I can take to a new job and, cement myself in product marketing. And I think a lot of other people just aren't doing that. They're kind of bogged down by like, oh, what is the definition? Where should I fit? And I'm like, just adapt to what the needs are of the organization. Maybe right now they don't have a lot of help on the product side. Maybe you need to lean into that. Maybe they don't have a lot of help on the marketing side. Maybe lean into that. But for me, I just keep myself as like, I'm the consultant. I will work wherever I need to in order to get the results that I need in order for me to be valued and keep a salary rolling in.
Nice. So Hattie, now we want to touch upon the amazing community that you are also building, like us, productmarketers.com. How was the idea came about, and what are you doing with the community right now?
Yeah, so the idea came about around a year ago when I had seen like 5 tech layoffs happen, and I was so afraid of being cut. And I personally, I don't have rich parents. My dad was a baker. My mum was a cleaner who came to this country and then trained up to be a training assistant. I don't have a husband or a partner. So, I'm just like, oh my God, I need to make sure that I have a salary, dude. So I recognized that I really needed to build my personal brand and make sure that the market knew who I was, because I genuinely thought if I was let go tomorrow, who are the 5 people that I could call who could help me get into a new job? And I couldn't name one. So it really instilled the fear of God into me, where I was like, I'm going to be another person who just applies to hundreds and hundreds of applicants on LinkedIn for jobs. And I was like, I refuse. I absolutely refuse. So then I was like, okay, well, I need to work on my internal personal brand to make sure that I was seen as a linchpin so I would never be let go in the organization that I was working at. And at the exact same time, I need to put out little flares, little signals to the market that not only am I really good as a product marketing manager, but you should consider hiring me at any time of the year, not just in January, where it's like the peak hiring season. So for me, I wanted to build up a reputation at scale. So it wasn't just the people who've worked with me in the past who know I'm very, very good at what I do, but it was reputation at scale, networking en masse. So like, for example, you guys know about me. I've never been to India, but you invited me onto GoPMM. And therefore I was like, okay, well, how do I create a community that I can help other PMMs to learn from what I've accomplished and also my failures that I've learned across the year? So then you can just bypass all of the crap and just get to the result that you want. So initially I built out productmarketers.com to be the place to learn about how to build up your personal brand as a PMM. Now, the funny thing that came with that was a lot of PMMs were like, hey, I can't use L&D budget towards it because I don't feel comfortable saying that I want to build up my personal brand to my employer because they might see me as like wanting to build myself up here and then leave. Or they were saying right now, personal branding isn't, the priority. I just want to learn how to become a better PMM. So I was like, okay, this is really interesting feedback that was coming in through the surveys that I was conducting with the people on my email newsletter and in my community. So now I'm kind of slightly pivoting where I'm trying to include more voices from the product marketing world, where when I started on YouTube, I'd recognized there was a lot of gatekeeping involved, where it was like everything was behind a paywall. It was like, and also the things behind a paywall. So like these courses and whatever, they weren't reflective of product marketing right now, where product marketing right now is like, it is not utopian. It is cutthroat. A lot of like venture capital money has stagnated. Therefore, these organizations are like, oh my God, we actually need to make profit. What is profit? And, and therefore they're like making, cuts and like cutting costs, etc. And it's like product marketing is like in a completely different world right now. So I recognize that the gatekeeping came with the people who are way more senior, who are like, I know the rules of the game and I'm keeping it to myself. And I'm like, well, why does that need to happen? So I'm trying to include more of their voices, more of the PMMs who've done the good, the bad, the ugly, and share their insights into how they do product marketing. I hate fluff, so I want it to be more action orientated, about them showing how they build up their go-to-market plan. Because, for example, for me, I'm very nosy. I like to know how other people are doing things. So I just think, what is an Amazon PMM doing? Like, how do they work? Because is it a smaller team? Like, how do they build out a go-to-market plan? Is there like red tape? Do they have to wait months in order for approval? Like, what's that look like? And I want these questions answered. So I'm hoping that will be more of the space for productmarketers.com, but I'm totally happy pivoting and changing it according to the needs of PMMs. So if some of your listeners want to give me feedback, please let me know. But yeah, I think there's a lot of space, especially for GoPMM, for for example, where you're building out a community for product marketers within India. And I think that's been so forgotten, so put to the side, where it's like a lot of the product marketing intel on Google has been like US centric. And I love my American friends. However, I'm just like, dude, shut up. Like let us like live our life in like UK, Europe, India. Like we have our own different rules and they do not apply here. Like go away. So I think there's a lot of space for us to really communicate and learn from one another. And it only takes a few people to create their communities in order for us to have exceptional careers.
Totally agree with your point. And I think that was even when me and Vipul also decided to start GoPMM, that was our idea. That, okay, let's just start, because we also felt that there is a gap in terms of education and awareness, as far as I can talk about India, about product marketing. And that's when we started the community. And we are very happy right now that me and Vipul, we no need to be there, and replying to every single message, because people are helping each other. And that's what we wanted to do. And I think that's what is happening with the community. So I totally agree with your point that there are need of this kind of community where we can give voice to people, and also whenever they have any doubts, we can solve it among ourselves. So yeah.
So Hattie, I just wanted to, the pivot that you're making from personal branding towards enabling product marketers to the best version of themselves. What to you is an exceptional product marketer? And what are the 3 or 4 specific things that every listener, every member of GoPMM, Varun and I, all of us can do to bring ourselves closer to being that kind of ideal endpoint?
Oof, that is a big question. So what an exceptional PMM is to me is someone who's able to balance the strategic element with the executive side, but also has worked on the imposter syndrome that comes with it. So let me explain. A lot of the PMMs that I've spoken to, especially within the UK and even in America, have really highlighted that imposter syndrome is the biggest thing that's holding them back from having a voice. And I totally get it, because the way that we've been set up as PMMs, working across so many different teams, is usually we're left with the brunt of the work, or people are telling us how things aren't working. And also they're kind of downplaying our results and downplaying our impact internally. So it's kind of fair enough that we have imposter syndrome. It makes sense. We're not really built up to be respected. So that's one part of it. Then the second is, a lot of PMMs that I've spoken to have fallen into the trap of being the workhorse. The workhorse, by my definition, is someone who does a lot of the stuff, so does the tactical, but has no influence internally, and therefore they're not really considered for the strategic side, but they're just being told the work to do. So it's like, Hattie, go and do sales enablement. Hattie, go and do positioning, because there's an issue there. Like, review our website and like fill in the gaps. Like, and it's just like, if I did that and I was like, okay, boss, I'll go do that, it's just like, you're not considered when it comes to having a voice and having influence. And therefore, you're just seen as someone who just does stuff. So then when it comes to a case where they're like, I need to cut costs, they're like, well, maybe what she's doing we can do with AI. Maybe, we create some decks and do that, or we get the sales team to do their own thing, whatever. And it's the people who are able to work on balancing being liked by people internally, building up authority and influence, and having a voice and creating your voice internally, creating the moments that you can explain the context behind the projects that you're working on, or explain your findings, and making sure that this feedback loop gets back, but it's attributed to you. Then you're seen as a really important person within the organization, but also you're seen as someone who can do good work as well. Like the two hand in hand is like what makes a great person. Now, here's the thing. We've seen a lot of tech layoffs happen, and there's been a lot of people who are exceptionally good at their job being let go under the guise of underperforming. I personally think in this day and age of the world that we're working in, especially if you work in SaaS or tech, it's more about how you're liked and how you're being perceived than the work that you're doing. And it sucks, but it's the world that we're in. It's just a fact. So it's the soft skills that need to be worked on. And for me personally, the soft skills have been the hardest thing for me to have broken through in my life. And this is the work that a lot of people aren't willing to do because it hurts. It's kind of like the therapy, the self-love, the compassion, and the working on yourself outside of the workplace. So I had recognized that the salespeople weren't really gauging me. They weren't really interested. They just, it was like we were like water and oil. They were just allergic to me for the first few months when I had joined. And I had recognized that, oh, it's my communication style, because as you can probably tell, I can be quite blunt in how I speak. And some of them were completely like, oh, I don't like her. This is weird. Now, in some cases, it's like, well, that's a you issue. But in the professional world, okay, you know, I'll take it on the chin and I'll work on myself. So what I did was I took improv comedy classes in my free time in order to work on my communication skills, because I had recognized that when I was speaking to sales or the private equity firm involved were really drilling into me on a meeting or being like, what's the LTV of this customer? Who's our persona? Who's like the most converting persona that we have right now? Okay, well, why aren't we drilling into that? Like, that's how private equity is. They're very like interrogatory on the call. So I was like, what the hell? I had recognized that I had put a lot of pressure on my brain to think before I spoke. So I need to learn, how do I speak whilst thinking and also being able to be concise and summate the point that I'm trying to create. So I was like, okay, let me take improv comedy classes in my downtime so I can practice, get the reps in of my communication skills, so that when the time comes that I'm put under pressure, I have simulated the element of pressure through improv comedy, because a lot of people are like, Hattie, I communicate all the time. Like, I speak to my husband, I speak to my wife, I speak to my friends. And I'm like, yeah, that's when you're like comfortable. Like, when are the times that you actually start sweating? When you're like, your heart is like beating and you're like, oh my God, I'm about to fucking die. And it's like, that's what I was trying to simulate through doing improv comedy. And here's the thing. There are other skills that maybe other PMMs need to fill, or there are gaps there. And in my opinion, when I see that there's a gap to be filled in terms of my skill set, I'm quite excited. I'm going to be real. When I had an ego, I was like, oh no, like, I don't need to work on that. Like, I'm good. Like, I know my stuff. But when I dropped my ego and I was like, I'm simply human, I'm not perfect, and I have gaps. And the better I get, the more I recognize these gaps, then I'm like, I'm excited to take a class and learn on it. Or I'm excited to jump on YouTube and delve into, how do I communicate better? Or, you know, there's free ways of doing it. There's paid ways of doing it, totally up to you. But for me, I've recognized that if I can look myself in the mirror very candidly and say, okay, well, here's where I'm really good at right now, but here are my gaps, then let me fill in those gaps as quickly as possible. And I've recognized that a lot of PMMs, we love messaging and we love positioning, we love words. But when it comes to data or competitive intel or sales enablement, we're like, stay away. And it's like, that's okay, but it's worthwhile recognizing those gaps where you're like, okay, well, you lean into the things that you like and maybe you stay away from the things that you don't. And therefore, how do you simulate the fun feeling for the things that you don't want to do? So then you feel them and then you become stronger as a PMM and you become more resilient against what goes against you from the outside world, because we cannot control what our boss or our organization is thinking or what they're going to do as their next move. However, what is it that we can control within our own careers? That will enable us to kind of cement ourselves. And for me, when I think about what my exceptional PMM state looks like, it looks like making sure that people know about me and like making sure that I work on the skill sets that I'm really not great at right now, but there is room for improvement. But also at the same time, I give myself compassion. I'm like, you know, I'm not beating myself to death. I'm like, yeah, like, sure, I'm not great at that, but I can improve. Therefore, I just work towards that. But if I was stuck in the grind of just doing the work and doing what was right by my manager, which is like, just do the work, it's like, no, like that's setting me up for failure. And I generally think in the next 2 to 3, even 5 years time, the landscape, especially with tech, is going to be significantly different, especially with the adoption of AI. And I know that this is going to be like, some listeners are going to be like, oh God, here's the AI thing again. But I generally think with like the adoption of AI, and especially when AI tools come out, that are able to do to like 80% or even 90% accuracy some of the tactics that we do as PMMs, it's going to be hinged, us as PMMs is going to be hinged on how well we're able to communicate, our human-centric skills, and how liked we are that people want to grab us in and use us for our creativity and how we think as a systemized like human being, whilst we utilize these tools that are able to do the grunt work. And having spoken to one guy who has like, he's built out this product marketing AI tool out of New York, which has garnered attraction from big American banks that are actually using his tool. I was completely shocked that I was like, holy crap, like I need to work on myself, because at some point it might actually be completely removed from me. Like my product marketing knowledge might be completely removed from me, but what won't is my capability to be creative and to use these tools in order for me to become a very, very like important person within the organization who can get the job done at the speed of light. And being liked is part of that, and being able to communicate is part of that, and being able to be an authority figure and be able to build that influence is part of that. And another hypothesis I have, I know it's a really long answer, but another hypothesis I have is there's going to potentially be a time where organizations will want to hire the people who have the audience who is their ICP. And why I say that is CAC, cost of acquisition, is always going to go up for organizations, especially if they hit colder and colder audiences where they do want to tap into, but it's going to be cold and therefore it's going to be expensive for them to break through. Now, B2B influencers are kind of on the rise. They're not really being mass adopted, but they are kind of being adopted by the early innovators and early businesses. A gap that I see is, well, what if you could hire someone who already has your ICP as an audience and has done the legwork, and then you hire them and then you bring them in as a kind of a face of the brand. And also, whilst they do the good work, but also you can tap into their audience for a fraction of the cost of what cold CAC would be. I think that's the way we're potentially going to go. And I think that's also a case of leverage that we can create. And everything that I've spoken about in terms of this answer is about creating a leverage for you to stand out and for you to be considered as someone who's always hireable. So that's my definition of what exceptional sort of looks like. It's very holistic. It's about working on yourself outside of the workplace, bringing in those skills into the workplace, but making sure that you become the person that you want to kind of enjoy being around. Because one thing that I mentioned, especially when Product Marketers was around personal branding, I mentioned, who are you? Like, are you the person that you show yourself to be on LinkedIn, which is all perfect? And, oh, I know everything about product marketing. And, oh my God, I go to fancy cafes. But then when you're with your husband or your wife, you're like so energy drained and you're just annoying, or like you're not open-minded and you're not kind to them, but you're kind to people that you want to gain something from in the career world. And I'm like, well, which one are you? And therefore, how do you build yourself up to be the same person online and offline? So it's always consistent. So when someone's like, oh, I watch Hattie on a YouTube video, my God, she's so funny and she's so like vibrant. But they met me in real life and they were like, she's the exact same. Like, oh my God, she's even better. Like, she's fucking crazy. You know, then it's like, that's congruent. That's like, it's because that's who I am. I'm just authentically myself. I think it's the exact same thing in the career world. It's like, if you want to be exceptional at anything, it's like, make sure that you're holistically set up and you're like working on yourself. So yeah, that's just my very long-winded answer. Do you guys agree with that, or what do you think?
So much. And I think there are like specific elements of it, right? So one would be, if we take a step back and say, the first thing you need to be able to do is, and I'm just trying to break it down into 3-4 things so that it's easier for our listeners to kind of take away from it, that overcoming the stress and being capable of stating what you want to say in high pressure situations and dealing with that both in terms of overcoming the stress. Improv classes might be getting more signups after this, or in terms of communicating effectively, which is being able to put your point across. Being likable and being the kind of person you want to be around is obviously a super important part of it. Acknowledging the gaps, but compassionately getting better. I think that is something that I couldn't agree with more, because I think particularly where the barrier situations or the understanding of what PMM is in that clear cut, there are always going to be those gaps. But that brings me to like my next question, that there are various different skills. And I think you've mentioned sales enablement or the, maths or the data stuff that some PMMs are uncomfortable with. Do you think there are like PMM archetypes and what a few of those might look like? And how do you think people can carve out those sorts of archetypes if that's what they're good at in their role and in their company?
Yeah. So I think that this is key in terms of if you want to really niche down into a specific archetype or book, lean into your superpower, then it's key to do the research, especially outside of the workplace, or to also look within the workplace and create moments or projects that lean into your superpower. So for example, if you want to be the positioning PMM, and that was the archetype that you were aiming for, then how is it that you can like manufacture a project internally that will lean in for you to strengthen those skills? But also, if the organization is like, hey, positioning is not a priority right now, I'd rather you not. How is it you can lean into doing the reps outside of the workplace? For example, if you're looking at other B2B organizations or legal tech or fintech, whatever your industry, specific wants are, how can you look at those organizations and create positioning takes on them so then you always tap into your brain and strengthen it over time? But also you could potentially put that on LinkedIn. You can create like a blog on it. You can create an email newsletter on it. You can create whatever kind of content, or you can just keep it to yourself. It's totally up to you. Or even just ping it to the CEO of that organization and create a conversation moment. So for me, it's a case of like, well, if an organization is not allowing you to do the work that will strengthen your superpower, then how is it you can still get the reps in and not take no as an answer, but do it outside of the workplace? And this is where a lot of fractional PMMs do exceptionally well, is the fact that they have strengthened the skills over their 10 years, 20 years internally. And then they built out a sort of like a framework or a foundational way that they do the work. And then they take it outside of that organization, put it into their own agency, and then scale it. And that's basically what April Dunford has done with obviously Awesome, like the book is on my shelf. And she basically told me that she had spent 15 to 20 years being a consultant internally and had built out this framework. And then it was her go-to, rinse, repeat. So then when she quit, she actually created her book, but she wasn't actually expecting a lot of sales off the back of it. However, a lot of organizations were like, oh, this is how you do positioning, because they had never seen anything else apart from her framework. And it was so simple with the 10 steps. So this is where I'm like, if you recognize that you're really strong at something, lean into it. And for me personally, I recognize that I'm very strong at speaking. When I have presented, especially at my last organization, when I've done presentations, and especially when it was all C-suite doing presentations, and for some reason, the VP of marketing would have me do a presentation alongside them. The people internally were like, Hattie, you smashed that. Like, that was insane. That was exceptional. You had everyone gripped for like the 40 minutes that you were speaking. That was insane. I have all these screenshots of like all these little praise. I was like, yay. But it meant that when I was like, hey, I'm going to create a YouTube channel, people were like, what? Like, you? Like, what? But the people who worked with me and knew how I talk, they were like, of course you're going to have a YouTube channel. What the hell? Like, you should have had it 5 years prior. And it's like, I am leaning into my strength. And I feel like there's a lot of other PMMs who can do that. And there is, I think if you think about like abundance mindset, there's a lot of gap in the market, because a lot of PMMs, and maybe they've told you guys through GoPMM, but they've told me that they're like, oh, it's saturated. Like everyone has said everything that I think online. And I'm like, yeah, but they've said it from their point of view. Where are the voices where it's like, okay, out of doing product marketing in India, what is your perspective? How does it differ from the UK? How is it different from the US? Like, I would love to learn. Like, I would love to know how it's different, because I'm just naturally curious. A lot of other people are. So I think it's about recognizing what archetype you do want to be associated with. And also, this is an important one, recognize the archetype you don't want to be associated with. So for example, there are organizations who might take you in a completely different trajectory where they're like, actually, all we need you to focus on for the next quarter is sales enablement. That's all we need you to do, sales enablement. But in the back of your mind, you're like, well, that's the thing that I'm least like good at, and also the thing that I hate the most. So it means that how do you then carve out time away from your organization? So then you strengthen the skills like a muscle, like going to the gym. How do you strengthen the muscles that are not being used? And therefore, how do you make sure that whenever you go to a new organization, the current company has not you over by having you focus on specific product marketing needs from what they want? But how do you make sure that you're strengthening your skill set? So then an organization is like, oh, you were just doing sales enablement. Well, we don't need that. We need a well-rounded person. So what is the anti-archetype and what is the pro-archetype that you're aiming for? Making it very clear, even written down in bullet points right now or after this podcast, and making sure that you kind of align everything what you're doing to the archetype that you either want to be or the future you in like 5 years. And you're like, that's where I want to get to. And how do you work baby steps towards that?
Amazing.
That's
And
yeah.
so much to learn from this. But go on, Varun.
Yeah, I think Hetty, now we have already touched upon personal branding for a PMM, and I'm sure there are so many listeners who also want to start their own personal branding. So, according to you, how they can approach it both internally, for example, if they are working in any organization, so how they can do internally within their organization, and second, how externally they can do it. For example, building a network, social media, etc.
Yeah, of course. Well, step number one, join productmarketers.com. No, I'm joking. Yeah, so internally, it really, for me, here's how I recognized it. So when I was in my last company, I'd recognized that I had a micromanager who really, really wasn't on my side. And if anything, he was acting to the detriment of my career by making me seem smaller with other people internally. So it was really, really hard for me to build influence whilst he was my manager. Now, the minute that he stopped being my manager was the minute that I was like, I need to rebuild this. Like, holy crap, people just see me as a workhorse. They don't know who I am. I was literally like, no, like, guys, no one knew my name up until a year ago. Like, you didn't. Like, no one did. Like, I was anonymous throughout my career. So, and the exact same thing happened at the organization I was working at. I recognized that I needed to not only explain what product marketing is, but also who I am and how do I help you and how do you help me. That was the goal of like my quarter. It was like, let me just make sure that I get the face time internally. So I did a product marketing roadshow. I made sure that I did the one-to-ones with people who really didn't either respect me, especially in sales at the time, or they just didn't know what I did, or, you know, just didn't know I was the go-to person. So I did the one-to-ones to really rebuild those relationships. But also I did company-wide conversations. I did product marketing roadshows, which were like team specific. So I would go to the sales team, I would go to the customer support team. I'd explain what product marketing is, what they can do for me and what I can do for them. And I would make it abundantly clear. And therefore, whenever a new person was joining those teams, I would make sure that I would jump in first, introduce myself, make sure that I was defining what I did. So then if another salesperson was like, oh, Hattie does sales decks, they didn't just go off of that. But actually I had spoken to them and made sure that I was like, no, this is how I work with you. This is how you work with me. Let's do check-ins. Let's blah, blah, blah. So I was doing the groundwork in not only the product marketing projects that I was working on, but the people that was associated with it. So I was also bringing them in to projects very early. I was like, hey, I'm going to do a go-to-market for this new feature release. I need you to be involved. Like, let's do a kickoff call. And I would organize this and make sure that people ramped up, always involved. And it was a lot of work for a quarter or even like 2 quarters, but man, did it set myself up for success. So I would recommend internally, if your personal branding is really being shot, and you would recognize this through the byproduct of you're not being brought into meetings, you're not being respected, you feel like they kind of use you and they don't really respect you, or like they don't understand what it is you do, and therefore it's that legwork that needs to be done. Now, when it comes to external personal branding, I generally believe that there's a lot of space for a lot of PMMs to have a voice, especially right now, and especially within countries that there hasn't been a voice for product marketing yet, especially for India, for example. So I would start with, okay, well, what's the perspective that you want to have? What is the personalized perspective that you want to have? A lot of the videos that I have, well, one of the videos that I have within productmarketers.com is one-of-one content, which is how do you create content that is only from you And therefore, you're only speaking to your experience. Because here's the thing, anyone can find, the top 5 things of positioning on Google. Like, we're not Google, we're a personal brand. We're not an informational brand, right? So for me, I'm like, okay, well, what is it that you can pull out of your experience, out of your career, that you can link to a specific topic that you want to speak about? And therefore, it's always your perspective, always your opinion. So then if anyone wants to debate or say, or call out, it's not about, calling BS on what you said, but it's more about them debating your experience of it. So for example, if I said, well, I've done 50 go-to-markets in my career, and here are the things that I've learned that have led to successes or failures, then it's like, well, that's her perspective. How can you fight her on that? Right. And that's where I would lean into. It's like, what is the content you can put out, especially on LinkedIn or YouTube or whatever the medium is for whoever, that will lean to your perspective and your career and your experience. And I would really think about it from a who is your ICP basis. So for example, naturally, a lot of PMMs who are in my community, they think that their ICP is PMMs. And I'm like, no, it actually isn't, because it's not aligned with what your goal is. So thinking about what your goal is really key, because is your goal to land a new job with your personal brand? Is your goal to set yourself up for success when you go fractional? Because if you go fractional, actually your ICP are founders and CEOs of their own early stage B2B startups, or maybe their later stage, maybe their Series A, Series B, clarifying that. And therefore, what is the content you want to create in order to get their eyeballs? And therefore, they would be more willing to buy from you. So it's about clarifying what your goal is, making sure that you speak only from your experience and not just generic information, because anyone can find that on Google. Why would they want to listen to you? And just leaning into being authentically yourself as well. I know that's cliche, but it really is key, because everyone that I've spoken to, they're like, wow, Hattie is authentically herself, man. Like, there is no other person. And I recognize that that's a superpower, because at the end of the day, and we were mentioning this earlier from an employee perspective, but from like if you were your own boss, or if you went fractional, or even if you still remained an employee, it's about being liked and you being the person who's thought of front of mind over anyone else. And at the end of the day, people like to do business with people that they like. So that's where I would attack. It's like, make sure that you do an audit across the board of where are the gaps, where are the places that you do want to improve, but also what is your goal and how do you align everything of what you're doing to your goal, so you're not just wasting time.
That's amazing. I can't think of any better way to put it. And thank you so much for that, Hattie. I think one final question on personal branding itself. A lot of people, and this ties into the imposter syndrome that you alluded to earlier. So even if someone were to do that audit, I think the biggest kind of cliff or threshold barrier to them doing it is them just staring at the LinkedIn, input box, or trying to figure out what to do. And with AI coming in, there's so much that is reproduced generic stuff often enough, and it leans into some of those have a little story about yourself, and that, like, there are actual templates that are put out there in terms of LinkedIn prompts that you can use. How do you think being authentically yourself in this kind of era where everything is being fed into these giant algorithms and spitting out copies, how do you think PMMs should find their authentic self, and how should they continue to put that out into the market?
Oh, yeah, it's such a great question. So when I was thinking about how do I create content for myself, I recognized that the ideas came at the times when I least expected it. So for example, it'll be after a meeting where I'm like, wow, that was wild. So what I recognized was I needed to write it down in my notes app on my phone. And it would occur even when I was cooking dinner. I'd just be thinking about something. My mind would be wandering. I'd be like, wow, that's a really, yeah, like I do think that. And then I would write it down. So for me, I was capturing the moments when I was thinking about the ideas when I was thinking it. So I wouldn't just come and sit at my desk and look at the blank screen, like you said, and be like, right, I need to write something, groundbreaking and philosophical. It was like, no, I was just having those moments. I was capturing it when they happened. And I think that's key, is like recognize when those moments happen for you. Now, when it comes to authenticity, it's really funny that AI has come in and people are replacing their most authentic selves with AI, when actually it should be us using AI for moments that aren't, personal. So for example, people use AI to write birthday cards or like a really meaningful message or like, a wedding speech, like the most prime and like personal moments that we're outsourcing to AI, when actually AI should be utilized for the stuff that isn't personal. So for me, in my perspective, is I use AI when it comes to just the stuff that isn't related to me, but I will write my initial V1 take in like my phone app or on LinkedIn on my phone, because I like to synthesize. And then I will just make sure that it's aligned with what I'm trying to say. And when it comes to the imposter syndrome side, I totally get it because I went through it. Because initially I was like, well, what gives me the right to speak about this? Or like, why should I? I'll be real, I had the fear of the layoffs that really booted me up the bum to just do it. So I had that really just instilling the fear of God into me, that I was like, I need to put myself out here. It's no longer a nice to have. It's an absolute requisite of being in tech, especially with tech layoffs. So I would really, really lean into, what is your why? Your why might be, I really want to give my kids a really good life. Or your why might be, oh, I just want to make sure I always have a salary. Like your why can be anything, but using that as the crux of, I'm willing to step out of the comfort zone and put out my thoughts online in order for me to always tap into what my why is. And here's the thing. This is what really broke my mind, which was, we're in a permissionless state, which means that anyone can create their own book and publish their own book. You don't need a publisher anymore. We're not Beatrix Potter. We don't need to wait around for someone to like publish our book and like approve it. We can publish anything. We can publish a TV show on YouTube. And basically that is our TV show. We don't need to wait for a channel to accept us. We are in a permissionless state. However, most people are still waiting for permission. I don't know if it's an evolutionary thing or a cultural thing or what, but I'm like, why are we waiting? Like, what is it that we're waiting for? Like, we had to wait for our parents to give us permission. We had to wait for our teachers to give us permission. We were like embedded in this state where we had to wait for other people to create our own lives and create our own grades that will be like, oh, we got an A grade for that. Like, well done. Well, now it's like, as an adult, no one's giving you a grade. You are out on your own. You are on the frontier of your own life. And therefore, why are you waiting for anyone to give you permission? For me personally, I live every day with gratitude that I wake up alive. And I'm going to be real. Like, I have a very hot take, which is like, I don't know how long I'm going to live. And I think a lot of people think innately that they're going to live till 100 years old. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know, but I'm just going with the flow. So for me, I think I want to live with the least amount of regrets in my life. And what I've recognized is great fortune and great opportunities come out of putting myself out there and being bold. And I want to have the wildest life that when I'm like super like awesome and 90, hopefully years old, that I'm like, wow, that was exceptional. The ride was exceptional. Like I did everything to just have a meaningful, human-centric life. And I did everything that I could. And I waited for no one. And I always envisaged, like, if I could be 70, 80, 90 years old and be like, I don't give a fuck what anyone thinks about me. I'm just like, why can't I just do that right now? Like, who says I need to wait until that age? Like, why can't I just do it right now? And that's literally what I'm doing. I'm like, I don't care if I have haters. People will love me. People will hate me. That's cool. Like, pick your poison. But either way, I'm always going to show up. I will never leave. So either block me or keep seeing my face because it's always going to pop up. So I recognize that figuring out what your why is, and my why was like, I need to get rid of tech layoffs. Like, I need to protect myself. Like, I need the salary. I don't have like a husband. What the hell do I do? That was what really just booted me to just starting taking the steps. and just capturing those moments, the ideas when they came to me and not forcing it, just allowing it to happen organically. And I wasn't niching myself. I was just speaking about anything product marketing related. I was speaking about life stuff as well, with like the breakup of my last relationship and all of these little learnings that came along the way. So I would just show up as my authentic personal self and not just an informational self. So I pair the two, which is like, here's my knowledge, but here's a bit about me as well. So I really appreciate someone on like the GoPMM community said that I was like the John Wick of product marketing. Like, truly appreciate that. Thank you. And yeah, that's like, I'm just showing up as myself. I'm just out here like slashing shit, but I'm just showing up as myself. And I'm like, it is what it is. And I really want other PMs to do the same, because there is never a better time to do it than now. Like, there's only like a handful of faces that are really well known within product marketing. And why can it not be yours?
You're slashing through all the fakery and you're shooting truth bullets. So both of those work out really well in the John Wick paradigm.
Yes, and I think completely agree when you mentioned that there are very few people in the community right now who is talking about product marketing, and that's where many people also decided to talk about it. Yeah, but Hattie, thank you so very much for answering each and every question. I can't tell you how much. First of all, me and Vipul has to go through this podcast again and again to you know get all the learnings about community building, personal branding, and everything about PMM. So thank you so much. But before we end the session, when we announced in our community that we are doing our first ever podcast with you, people were so excited and they have shared so many questions, which and we selected very few of them for you. And these are not the question particularly around the personal branding, but PMM in general. So I'll just want to ask few of them. The first question is, how should I transition to PMM? My background is in content and SEO with experience of digital marketing with some responsibility for activities such as events and webinars. And
Oh,
before you answer, this is the question which so many people are also asking us, in the community, even on social media. This is something which everybody, when they are thinking of transitioning into PMM, even I had similar background. I was also handling content and then transitioned into PMM, but would love to know your thoughts.
yeah. So there's two routes you can go down. It's either you join an organization as the content marketer or a similar role as to what you're doing within an organization, and then you vouch for becoming a PMM. So then you can move into the PMM role. So that's one way of doing it. But the second way is probably the way that I assume people are thinking, which is like, how do you jump from being a content marketer right now and then joining a new organization as a PMM? So that wasn't one way. The second way is you would have to find where the overlaps are and then align incentives. So aligning incentives is a concept that I also share in productmarketers.com, which is like, what is the goal of the organization? And therefore, how can you align all of your skill set that will showcase that you can hit their goal through what you currently have? So therefore, what is it that you can have in a resume that's very specific to that organization that outlines the skill set that will align what you can do with the incentive of that organization? So it's a case of having very different resumes to where you're applying and making sure it's absolutely catered with the skill sets that you can take from your content marketing background and your events background into product marketing. So for example, it could be aligning stakeholders is a very key one. I would imagine that's absolutely key. Content marketing could have involved writing the blogs or writing the social media copy or writing or doing a full rewrite of the website. And therefore you can relay that to the positioning aspect. You can say, hey, I did a full website rewrite, or I did a social media campaign that I had to do the positioning research, and then I had to do the messaging research that went alongside it, but also then I enabled other teams to use that in order for them to do good work. So even though I wasn't a PMM, I was a de facto PMM. I was doing the work of a PMM. So it's a case of like, what do you highlight and what don't you highlight, and making sure that the resume is very catered towards that. Now, if you're coming up against other PMMs who are, they've had the job title and, it's really, really competitive out here, I would lean into being like, showing how hardworking you are. I think a lot of tech companies, especially with the tech layoffs that have happened, and all of the conversations that I've had with recruiters recently, because I have like at least one recruiter in my DMs on LinkedIn a week, and I always take their calls because I'm curious about what the landscape of the job market is, and also if they want to pay me a lot of money, like, hey, I love money. And one recruiter that I spoke to last week, actually, she was like, there's a lot of PMMs who come from large organizations who they've been given the Google playbook, they've been given the Meta like playbook or whatever, and they do not know how to hustle. They literally like, they do not have the startup mindset. I was like, oh, that's really interesting for me to note, because therefore you can really stand out from the pack if you really highlight the fact that you went the extra mile, you were able to hustle, you were able to tap into the skill set, which was the entrepreneurialism, like we spoke about, but also the element of like having that hard work and like the work ethic that comes with being at a startup. So it's a case of like utilizing and leveraging everything you have as a content marketer. Were you in a specific vertical? So for example, we were a content marketer in fintech or legal tech. How do you then use that to then jump into a legal tech firm so you're not worlds away, but you make it easier for yourself? It becomes harder when you're trying to jump like completely away. So you were like in, I don't know, a legal tech firm, you're trying to break into health tech or whatever. Then it becomes like, well, you're then really being like compared on the skill set and the actual experience. But if you can try and leverage anything that you have, especially in your arsenal, anything that you've gained to releasing and making the gap as small as possible, then that's the way I would go. And then I would say a third sort of bonus tip is if you're really, really finding it hard right now, I would lean into trying to have those one-to-one conversations, because I think a lot of the blocker that comes with trying to apply for a PMM role, especially if you're transitioning, is actually just getting the conversation started. So then it's a case of who can you reach out to? What are the meetups you can attend that will enable you to have these conversations with the right ICP? Where are the people who could then refer you internally so then they can get, for example, a referral budget? So there are some people and some organizations where if you refer a candidate and they get placed, then they make money out of it. So then you're again aligning the incentives with the person who can then refer you, so then they can get some money and you get a job. So I would say like trying to figure out what your leverage is, aligning incentives. And if you have any other questions, please ping me on LinkedIn. Like, I'm happy to help. But yeah, it's a really tough one. So I can imagine why a lot of people in GoPMM have been asking for this.
One more question. Actually, there are two, but I'll combine them in one. What is that one campaign from all your years of experience which stand out for you? You really proud about that. And second one is which was the most challenging one? And of course, it's challenging. You definitely have so many learnings.
So I have a story that like broaches both. It was both the most challenging and the best. It was when I was hired as CMO for the Finland-based company, SaaS company, and they were B2G. So they had hired me as the CMO to really see if they could do the success that they had in the Scandinavian region within the UK. Now, what I'd recognized was going to B2G, which is business to government, was a very slow pipeline, very slow sales process. It was insane. It was just a lot of ABM campaigns that I was trying to conduct. I was like trying to meet with people face to face. It was such hard work. It was insane. But what I'd recognized out of it was I was conducting my own customer research, doing my own surveys, paid surveys to other people within B2B. I'd recognized that there was a huge gap within B2B. And also we could sustain the B2B arm alongside the B2G, whilst that could give us the revenue, and then the B2G can get us the huge wins over quarters, right? So what I had really done was I had pushed to the CEOs, which were there. They were free CEOs. They were co-founders. They were friends from school. So it was very, very hard as me, the outsider, to try and convince them to take their business in a completely new direction. But I had convinced them, convinced the investors. I'd done all of the conversations, shown the research, and made it very clear, abundantly clear, why there was a business case to us creating the B2B arm within this organization. It took it in completely different trajectory, and the revenue that it garnered out of that was insane, like absolutely insane. So we absolutely crushed it. And the campaigns that were involved were a mix of like ABM. So what I did was I created these little sweet and candy boxes. And then we created a report that we had put together from conducting all of these one-to-one sort of podcast, interview, blog series episodes with people within the government, put it into a report, put it in this box with candy and sweets, and then like sent them out to our ICP. And it was amazing because that was like a social media moment where these government bodies were taking these photos and putting on social media and tagging us, but also they were like, yeah, I'm willing to chat. Like, let's have a conversation. So then I was using the B2B momentum and the creativity was coming out of that into the B2G arm of it as well. So, and also at the time it was COVID. And one thing that it was really interesting was I was speaking to a person who they own like the borough within a specific area of the UK. So it's basically like a really small area within the UK. And we were speaking about, well, how do they create cut through and how do we utilize our platform? And what we had done was we had sent a ice cream truck who was then sending out and handing out leaflets of ours to governmental bodies through this ice cream truck, because at the time you needed to social distance. So no one was getting close to one another, but an ice cream truck could go from place to place and hand out little gifts on behalf of us. So it was a case of like using a lot of creativity on the back of being a tech firm, which we were. We were a software company, right? So for me, it was like, it was so fun. Like that campaign was just so fucking fun. Like every day I was like, what can we do next? Like what creative like can we do? And like what can we do online and then take it offline as well? So, yeah, that was super challenging to do, especially in the midst of COVID. But at the exact same time, it was killer. It was just such a great campaign.
Yeah, I do think ice cream has been underutilized by PMMs. Now that you mention it, it has never occurred to me, but it just makes things easier. So, yeah. Like who says no to ice cream?
Right. Like positioning an ice cream, there's something in that.
But Hattie, most of the other questions you already answered during our conversation. So we can end the session here. Before we end, thank you so very much for doing this, not from ours, but from the entire GoPMM community. And definitely they will enjoy this conversation. Before you close in, any last word from your side?
Yeah, thank you so much, Vipul. Thank you, Varun, and thank you to the GoPMM community for being so supportive. I heard all of your kind words from the guys. So yeah, I really do appreciate all of you. And yeah, keep crushing it. Like make sure that you put India and product marketing on the map. Like don't be shy. Make sure that you really stand out, secure your career. And yeah, I'm here for anything. If anyone wants to follow me, I'm Hattie the PMM on LinkedIn and also on YouTube. And also I have productmarketers.com. So you are more welcome to join my community as well. But thank you so much for having me on the inaugural podcast episode. This is so exciting. Yeah, I'm so excited to see where GoPMM goes.
And after this start, we can only celebrate how great it was. Thank you so much, Hattie. Thank you for your time. We loved having you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all the listeners who are listening to us, whether on YouTube or on Spotify. So if you want to join the GoPMM community, we will put our WhatsApp group link in the description. Also, you can join our circle community. You will find the link in the description. And you can also follow us on LinkedIn. And if you want any help from either me or Vipul, we are happy to help you. And thank you so much for tuning in. We'll surely come back with the next episode. Thank you so much.